Okay, we're back. This is a lighting episode, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how I approach everything as far as subjects go with lighting. Now, I don't like flat frontal lighting, they call it. So many photographers I see in the wedding photography industry, they will stand there with a flash on their hot shoe on the camera, and they'll just bang out shots. I understand why they do it, but there's other ways to do it and create very dynamic images that capture unusual details that flat frontal lighting will never be able to capture, right? They'll stand there all day and all night snapping off shots like that, and that's the most unflattering light for any subject you could ever use, right? So I'm approaching this whether I'm using an off-camera flash or whether I'm using natural light. I don't want the light directly on the subject. Now, I understand that that environment is generally pretty controlled. Subjects don't just, boom, show up, right? They don't just fly into a perch. So more often than not, and what I'm finding in bird photography, you have to take what you can get, but there are some things you can control. So I'll be going into some situations that I'm going to present myself with intentionally and start working with off-camera flash for fill flash and also for capturing action. In other words, high speed. We're talking 1/2000, 1/3000 of a second. So at the end of this, I'll have an image that I shot yesterday just playing around with an off-camera flash setup using a Pocket Wizard system that I used during my wedding photography days. It's old. It's about 20 years old. And I had the flash, which I'll explain it when I get to that image. I'll explain where the flash was and what it actually does, the effect that it creates. And it's just one image, but I'm going to run through some wedding photography images that I had, which will maybe give you a picture and hopefully help you understand a little bit more about what I'm talking about. And if you were to imagine, extrapolate this information and apply it to a bird, to wildlife photography. I don't think there's a single image in here where I used a flash, but if there is, I'll see it and I will tell you which one it is. But I grabbed some images from some old archives. Now, these were shot, believe it or not, on an EOS 10D from a long time ago. We're talking back in the early 2000s, 2001, 2002. And that begs me to make the point that it doesn't matter when you see these, it doesn't matter what you have. You can go out and capture some great images with any old camera, right? It's just the newer technology makes some things easier. They're higher megapixel count. You can blow them up larger. The average print in a wedding is like 8 by 10, a lot of 5 by 7s. Of course, I was book building with Graphi Studio in Italy. So the wedding albums, the books came from there after I put together the layouts and stuff. So kind of side railing here, but here we go. I'm just going to share some images with you. So let's get over here. Okay. This is what I'm talking about. Now, if I hit this girl, I can't even remember her name, too long ago, with a flash, there'd be no dynamic to this image, nothing. And you'll notice here, you can see where the light is coming from, and you can see the catch lights in her eyes. Guess what I used to do this? You got it. Window light. window light in, i.e., cloudy days, maybe hazy days, that is like a giant soft box. It is awesome. Window light for people is absolutely, I have more images. I just went through the first folder I got to, and I just grabbed a few out of here just to show you what window light does. We're calling it directional light, right? Soft. It's like a giant soft box. Let's get to the next one. Same thing. Window light. No flash. Look at the detail. Look at how the angled light creates shadows with highlights in the flowers and on her dress right here. If you put a flat frontal lighting onto her, you'd lose all of the dynamic. Look at the big catch lights in her eyes. Look at that. It's like a French door. There's a big window. And there'd be no detail. You'd blow out a lot of the detail. And now, keep in mind, it's very important in wedding photography. This is why I never used on-camera flash. Because the brides, now extrapolate this to birds, right? What does the bride spend most of her time doing pre-wedding? Picking out a wedding dress. There are details in a wedding dress that you will never see if you smash that with flat frontal lighting, right? You always want to rake the lighting across. Sometimes you can use backlighting, whatever. Let's get on to the other image. This is also window light. Notice the detail in the veil because the light is coming in at a different angle than where I was standing. Look at her eyes. Look at the catch lights in her eyes. Very dynamic, right? Really, really dynamic. Let's jump to the other one. Now this is an ambient light shot of the cake. Most photographers will take a picture of the cake with a flash. If that cake is near a window, check that out, folks. Look at the detail captured in the cake. It's very dynamic, very dramatic. You can do this with birds. And it's natural. That's the coolest part. It's natural. Let's get over here. This girl was absolutely stunning. And she was the nicest girl, her and her fiance. Nicest couple. Never forget them. This was window light as well. This was up in an inn up outside of Middlebury, Vermont. And see, when you look at this, look at the detail you can see in the veil. It's just, it produces this very flattering light. It's gorgeous. That's just a window. That's it. Same thing. Window. Blown a little bit in here. Didn't bother me. Didn't bother her. She loved it. Notice the hair light. You get the hair that lights up. Believe it or not, I kind of liked her hair, her bangs hanging into the side, shadowing her eyes because it makes her eyes. She had those types of eyes where you could see the catch lights coming in, and it's almost like you could see into her soul. It was very beautiful. Same thing. Now, this is interesting. Okay. Here's a perfect example of angular lighting. So what I did was I fired the flash. I had an off-camera flash that was over to my, I think this was on camera, and I actually fired it on the ceiling. It was a white ceiling, and I had the flash tilted and angled to the right. So it was brighter over to the right side. And instead of having the flash firing from the camera position down the barrel of the lens, which would have flattened this big time, you wouldn't have seen all of these subtle shadows in the roses. You wouldn't have seen that. There'd be no shadows there. It'd just be blown, just plastered, right? But by angling the light, you can create a very dynamic image. Let's jump to the next one. Here's an unusual one. This was at Lake Winnipesaukee. And I don't like bright sunlight, direct frontal lighting, but this was about, I would say, 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Sun was going down. It was very bright, as you can tell. But if you look at the shadows, see the shadow under his hand, under his arm. Look back here on the dress. Notice the detail in the dress. Notice the detail in the dress. Notice the shadows, the break right here on his forehead. Notice the highlight, the direct light on his collar, then it immediately goes to shadow. The light was coming from over here in this direction, right? But kind of up. It was still high enough, so it didn't put her chest, the dress here, in the shadow. That is one situation where you can use direct, full blast lighting from the sun or a flash to get a great shot with tremendous detail and dynamics, and yet still have it angled. It doesn't take much. If I had spun these guys so that they were facing more in the direction she was looking, it'd be just wham, just flat. It would have just gone flat. Everything would have been flat. There would have been no dynamic there whatsoever. Let's come over to here. This is an interesting shot. Window light. This was window light. This was up in, let's see. This was up by Bromley Mountain Ski Area in a place called Johnny Seasons. It's an inn up there. And they were doing a winter wedding. And this is a sepia conversion, which I thought for her just really worked nice. Very, very soft, the window light. And she was a little bit, what I liked about this is she was a little, I didn't have her right in the window. I had her back away from the window a little bit. And I mean, you can see how flattering that is. Look at the rim light. Now extrapolate this to a bird, right? Not in sepia, but kind of look at how that, in this, the last image I show you with the bird will explain this. Now this is extremely soft light coming in from the right side. Very, very soft. That was down in Bennington. And that's it for those images. So let me get over to, I'll grab the last image here, which is a bird I took yesterday, right? Okay, so this is a sparrow lit on a perch, and unfortunately I blew it because I was in manual focus mode, and I had it back focused just a hair. If you look at these feathers right here, and I was at 400 millimeter, no 1.4x on the 200 to 400, 35 millimeter equivalent at 646 millimeters. This was on the 90D. And the wind was howling. It was coming from the west, and it was blowing his feathers straight up, right? So what I did was I had a fill flash, and that fill flash was at 1/16th power, and it was off to the left. And it was half the distance between myself and the subject, between the blind and the subject. And so I would say it was probably 8 feet. And it was at 1/16th power, and I just wanted to provide enough fill just to illuminate him while still maintaining the backlight without, a lot of people look at flash and they'll say, well, I want to equal, even if it's off camera, I want to equal the value of exposure to the backlight. Well, you don't really want to do that, because then what you do is you flatten it like a pancake, right? So if you look right here, you can see the flash in his eye. So I put a little tiny catch light right in his eye right there when the flash fired. So the exposure isn't bang on, but I was just playing. This was like the first capture. So I was like, oh, okay. And if you look at his leg, you can tell that the flash was there. See that? But it's not so hot that it equals the sunlight coming in from the west, from the back side. You see what I'm saying? Provided enough color on the beak. So that is all things that I'm going to be going into and playing with, because I've never done this with birds. So I'm looking to create some very dynamic images with the birds using off-camera flash and backlighting and action with birds in flight, which I'm really looking forward to that. There is a way to, by adjusting your exposure. So I played with this a little bit yesterday, but unfortunately I got a picture of the bird and I screwed it up. The picture was blurry. There is a way to blow the background out almost. You can either go pitch black or just very, very dark by exposure comping, using the flash to light the subject primarily, right? Get a correct exposure on the subject using the off-camera flash, but then what you do is you can take the exposure down. Let's say, I think it was down 2 2/3 stops. No, it was 1 2/3 stops. 1 2/3 stops. And then I tried it again at over 2 stops. I think it was 2 2/3. I didn't quite go to 3 stops. And by adjusting the power of the flash, you can illuminate the subject and yet have the background, because the overall exposure without the flash is very, very low. So it's 2 to 3 stops low, so the background goes very dark, and you can actually make that go completely black. Kind of cool. I don't know if I like that because it's not real natural. I want to try and keep this as natural looking as possible, to the point where someone will see it and they almost wouldn't know. They wouldn't know that I used flash. See, that's the catch. That's the catch. Because this is natural. This really isn't portrait photography. I want to try and keep the birds looking as natural as possible in their environment. That's my approach right now. Will it change? I don't know. So that's it. Catch you guys later. Hope you found this interesting. And there's going to be a lot more to come. I'll share a lot. This is all experimentation for me. So feel free to subscribe. Feel free to comment. If you have any tips or tricks, as I'm just starting out in this process, hit me. Put it in there in the comments section. I do read them. I will read them. And we'll see y'all later. Have a great day. I have another kind of interesting project coming, and I may do a video on this later today using like that little GoPro thing. A perch idea. I have to go be a wood goblin. I'm going to be a wood goblin. And I got to get my spade bit out with my peanut butter. So we'll see y'all later. Have a great day, and thanks for stopping in.